Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a weekly podcast where we talk about everything that's wrong with the world and whinge about stuff like a couple of old Ramonas from England. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And this week we're going to talk about the right to repair movement. The idea that perhaps we should stop having, this addiction to disposable hardware of us and also corporations who would rather sell us something sealed off and wrapped up that expires after 2 years, and then we have to buy another one for like hundreds of pounds again, or thousands of pounds depending on what it is. The business practices around that and why this needs to change.
Having at one time supported my student income by repairing things and slowly watching the demise of the repairable home electronics product is something that's been going around for a little while.
Special props to Lewis Rosman, who has been very vocal on YouTube. He loves criticising Apple from a position of knowing an awful lot about the insides of their products. So, let's go. How's it going?
It's going very busily, actually. The Brighton Restaurant Awards vote online, known as the Bravos, launch on the Bravos will be launching on the 3rd of February, which makes me very busy.
Can people vote starting on the 3rd of February?
Starting on the 3rd of February, people can vote for their favourite cafes, pubs, restaurants in Brighton in 16 categories.
And so that's Brighton?
That is Brighton. A little bit of Sussex, but mostly Brighton.
Wonderful.
So yes, it's a lovely. I do like it because it's a very positive thing, and a lot of the smaller businesses that have won things or featured highly in things have absolutely remarked on the fact that they get more customers because of it. So that's nice, but there's an awful lot of work of putting people on websites and trying to find photos that aren't too depressing. So it's busy. And also I cannot tell you how much in a old lady sort of a way I'm enjoying watching the birds in my bird baths in my garden.
You're a pervert.
It is such a relaxing, joyful thing. I cannot recommend it highly enough. There you go.
Sounds good.
That's right. What about you, Michael? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I published a big blog post sort of thing about all my activities for the last 6 months. Uncovered some patterns. I've refined my behaviours as a result. I will link it in the description. Go and look at the description of this podcast. I always make an effort with it. Go and look at that. It's just basically I've detailed every hour I've spent in the last 6 months and shown what project. And it's just helped me realise I am but one man. And whenever I'm working on one thing, I'm not working on anything else. And so also it's helped me kind of go, I need to stop having a million possibilities in front of myself. I've just got a new workflow, which is one thing, just the next thing. That's all I'm looking at. And so I just focus on that and do it. And alongside that, I've been streaming all my work now on Twitch. Also a link below. If you want to just watch me program, you can.
Wow.
I finally unlocked monetization for that last week, and I've already got $7.50 a month coming in.
Wow. I did notice your link on Facebook to say that if I'm a Prime customer, I can just hook up and then you magically get some money.
Yeah, if you've got Amazon Prime and you connect to Twitch, because Amazon bought Twitch, they've got this thing where you get one free subscription that you can use on a streamer. So if you want to use that on me, you don't have to actually go on Twitch or anything. You can just go on, connect your Amazon Prime, and then if you click just subscribe to my channel, then I get $2.50 a month, and you don't have to do nothing.
And that means I get some of my Amazon Prime subscription just comes back to you.
Exactly. So wouldn't that be lovely? So that's the main two things. Also, we went to RuPaul's Drag Con last weekend.
Oh, yeah.
which was, well, started bad. We were in a queue in sort of like pretty freezing temperatures for the best part of 2 hours in the end. After like an hour and a half of queuing, we were sort of like, it hadn't moved for ages, and then security started coming down going, oh, sorry, it's 1 in, 1 out now, which understandably, considering how much we paid for tickets, made us a little cross, given that there seemed to be, that people were tweeting around like there's 3,000 people not getting let in because they've oversold the tickets, and chants of refund, refund, refund. And so, but then strangely, all of a sudden, the queue kind of surged, and we were in there, and it was what you'd expect. It was a sort of show, so it was all booths where you can queue up for half an hour to have your picture taken with one of your favourite queens. But as soon as we walked in, hey, it's Michelle Visage, and then walk a bit further, hey, it's Bob the drag queen. Oh my god! And then we saw Rue had a booth, and it was like, she won't be there. And then it was like, she was there all afternoon signing things. I've got a picture of her him. Sorry, I always forget. It was man Rue, so him. He was just there signing stuff, smiling, being enigmatic and charismatic, and I've got like a picture from this far away. And then we went back home and watched the rest of that series. It was like the same person from off the TV. Anyway, yeah, so bag of chips, blue hydrangea. Even saw Adore Delano is someone I would have queued up to have a photo taken with, but didn't seem to actually have a booth. But we sort of saw from above. A mildly depressing situation in some ways, but also just terribly exciting. We got to see a bit of a Trump Thatcher drag live, TNT Music Factory, they're calling it. But yeah, great. I was excited.
You silly. I was excited about your big giant blog post, which then that and a tweet gave me the encouragement to write my own Trumpiversary blog post. Which, I wrote
very good.
and shared.
It's down in the links. Go and have a read of Ivanka's Trump blog post.
It's one good outcome. We've often talked about this blog post being like the precursor to something. So it's like, this is the thinking time, and then you go off with the conclusions, or the conclusions come afterwards. I think writing that that post, let's call it an essay, was made much easier because lots of the thoughts, instead of them being all scrambled in my head, because we talked, lots of it was things we talked about, it all kind of flowed out relatively easily, to be honest.
Well, maybe now that people are asking for a book of the podcast, see what I did there? Maybe it's like, maybe we should do like a little book, because I really like the writing of that post. Maybe it's like, maybe we could like start collecting some essays. We could like have a few little essays on some of the different subjects, if we sort of, and maybe we can collect like 20 of them.
Yeah.
One each.
Self-publish a vanity book.
Self-publish. I don't know. Like if we do a nice job, like maybe send it out, see if anyone is interested. Why not?
Yeah. Why not?
Right to repair.
Right to repair.
Right to repair. Why is nothing repairable anymore? Where do we start on this? I remember back when I got my first MacBook Pro, I was quite impressed by how they seem to have made it really sort of pleasant to replace the battery, the hard drive, the RAM. I thought there's other stuff that maybe I think is a bit more niche that anyone's going to want to replace that, but I really appreciate that they've made it quite easy to change that. But then, of course, over the years, they have slowly eroded that to the point, like especially with the release of the Mac Pro, which is a so-called professional computer that literally does not take any standard components, that, you know, the dustbin thing, and then subsequent MacBook Pros, which have just, we're making it thinner. At what cost? You can't change the battery, which is a consumable item, which dies after a while. You can't change the RAM, you can't change the SSD, like you can't replace anything on a MacBook Pro anymore, really, without either spending ludicrous amounts of money, because there was always that you could get the RAM upgrade for like £400, but if you just bought it yourself, you could do it for like 80. So that's what I always used to do, and it was really easy to change it. So, but now you've only got that £400 option, or you're kind of voiding your warranty. And as time has progressed, they've got these I'm just going to talk about Apple for a bit. I hope that's okay.
Yeah. That's quite okay. Yeah.
They've actually got like this, the security chip on the latest MacBook Pros basically can brick a MacBook Pro that has been had an unauthorized repair, and the only way you have to do something with that chip in order to be able to kind of like replace a component and things like that. Like the reason for this, and Lewis Rossman, I'll link to the video where Lewis Rossman talks about this, but he said like he used to just be able to change stuff and it was fine. The reason, in Apple's defense, one of the reasons that they have instituted this is because there was a trend, there was this scam that people were pulling where they would buy a MacBook Pro or a handful of MacBook Pros from the Apple store, take it home, switch all the high quality components out for shitty components, take them back to return them to the Apple store, get the refund, and then the person that bought the computer would have this slightly shitty computer, and then they would blame that on Apple. And so Apple wanted to protect against that. Yeah. So this is one of the things that happens if you do have a product that costs thousands and thousands of pounds as well. But
how big a problem was that?
Apparently big enough to institute this thing. But let's face it, it's also because they want more ways of controlling that flow of that repair cycle. And now, like, you have to have some special bit of software to reprogram this chip in order to be able to, as an independent person, upgrade it without it just basically bricking the machine. I think that's right. Meanwhile, they have sort of technically opened up a repair program for like more third-party repairs, because there's all this stuff going on in Congress, I think, like where there's this right to repair lobby like happening that you know Apple are like defending and different companies are defending. And the reason Lewis focuses on Apple is because everyone kind of copies what Apple does. So Apple have to be doing the right thing, or like it's like there's that sort of tale of everyone basically kind of following Apple, and Apple have kind of turned this whole market into sealed off devices that you can't repair, and they're thinner and thinner and they're less and less repairable. Apple technically did open up this repair thing, but you know, Lewis did read out this whole email chain where it had taken months and months and months for this person to get onto this program, and then once they're on, basically it's laughably like devoid of anything useful. You're kind of stuck with it. Like, whereas a repair shop that knows what it's doing can change your battery or screen in like while you wait.
Yeah.
Apple's kind of policies tend to mean that you're going to wait a week. And who's going to wait a week for a phone?
For a phone.
Like, in what reality is that something anyone wants to do? So, like, absolutely, like the restrictions and like you can order like a battery and you have to order the battery and wait for it. Like you can't just buy the components. And Lewis has been stopped, like, importing the components that he needs to upgrade things. And basically, Apple is sort of like vaguely trying to allude to the fact that they're trying to make things more repairable, but in practice, they're down this line of they seem to want everything to be impossible to repair.
See, I make a point, like with my Apple phone, the last phone that the battery went really rubbish on. I went into my local store because they claimed that they have their own battery replacement service. I've done it a couple of times, but I always end up walking out with a new phone, a replacement phone, because they go, oh, we tried to change the battery and it didn't work. And you're like, did you though? How hard did you try? When you say try, what do you mean by try? You walked the phone downstairs and went to pick up a new phone. I mean, it feels nice, doesn't it? You know, like I've taken in a 3-year-old phone and I've walked out with a brand new version of that phone. But
yeah, who doesn't love new
not
stuff?
the point.
But it's really not the point. And
No.
repairability, fair phone. There needs to be, because like actually this is the other great thing about Lewis is like he just shows you like Apple will. He's got this big microscope thing. He shows you, look, usually if the screen is not turning on, the backlight connection is bad. Let's put it under the microscope. Here is a burnt out backlight connection with shit all over it, right?
Yeah.
And he proceeds to clean it off and like replace the connector. My customer took this to the Apple store and they told him it was going to be £400 or like, no, $1,200 or whatever to replace the logic board, to make this repair because the backlight wasn't coming on. You just have to look at it, like to know that, to fix it.
So in my little TV repair shop that I used to work in, a lot of old tellies with the cathode ray tube tellies that honestly 90% of the problems were down to the solder failing on the board. So the telly would come in, and it doesn't do this, and you'd go to turn the PCB over, and it'd be all these cracked solder joints. You'd resolder them, and I swear to you, 9 times out of 10 that fixed the telly. And then occasionally there'd be buttons break. It was a lot of the old video machines were very mechanical as well. It was cogs, it was belts, it was stuff that you could physically just see and fix. Of course, then if it was a telly, you'd get actual components failing, like a capacitor or... and Mike, who I worked with, was one of these, an electronics genius. He seemed to understand how electronics worked. I think it was almost like he felt it. So he'd go, and plus he'd been doing it since he was 3. So he'd just look at the telly, go, that'll be that capacitor on that bit of the board. Just do that one. Okay, and I worked with him probably 3 or 4 years. And over the time, then, these more flatter, fancier LCD, fancier screens, they start getting rid of the tubes. And then you'd get this Philips TV, 18 months old, and he'd be like, there's nothing we can do. All we can do is replace the whole board. So, parts then become harder to get hold of. You're not really doing anything clever because there's a point at which it gets so small that you need different kit. And, the smaller and older, these really light, when you pick it up and your VHS machine weighs nothing. It's like there's fuck all in there. So basically what we could do is we replace one knackered one with another knackered one. And really, there's just nothing to access to fix. So this guy who's fixing Apple phones, he's also obviously invested in a load of kit that helps him take them apart and makes it easier to take them apart, but and allows you to get in, because I'm quite sure that what used to be a broken solder joint, or just a house that had cats and everything inside just bunged up with cat hair, so much of it was hoover it up, clean it up, off you go, there you go, resolder, send it back.
I remember a time when you used to just sort of take something apart and put it back together again, and that kind of fixed it somehow. And I just can't imagine that now.
No, well, CD players, a lot of the time, all you had to do really was clean the lens with a cotton bud, and then clean the runners that the actual laser moved up and down on, and loads of things were just it's obviously the same thing that this guy Louis is finding, but just on a different scale. Or your volume knob. Oh, my stereo's really crackly. Give it over here. Squirt, WD-40. Wiggle, wiggle. Oh, look, I've repaired your stereo. That'll be money, please.
So why is this happening? I mean, the assumption is the more you can wall off your garden, the more control you have, the higher you can put the prices up for the specialist components you want. Because I remember, like, Apple, when they moved over to Intel Macs, I was like, I just love that they're using standard CPUs, like the same CPUs as everyone else now, instead of not even PowerPC. Like, I'm sorry, this is Greek to anyone, but like they're not using the weird ones now. They're using the really mainstream ones. They're using an operating system also, like, more than Microsoft, an operating system that's actually built on something that has some standards behind it, like OpenBSD. And like, I just felt like they were embracing the right standards in a really good way. But then we've just seen over the years that they have, for whatever reason, like, for instance, like, instead of using Google Maps, now it's Apple Maps. You can blame Google for that, fine. But also, I guess the sort of competition means that people are more kind of grabby of their stuff. It's like before Google had their own phone, they were kind of fine to have their thing on Apple's phone. But then once they were in competition with them, they start like wanting to hold on to it. So that gets more bespoke. But that's not really a hardware thing, but really more I'm talking about, like, now every Apple computer, every phone has this custom silicon, multiple custom chips in them. And there are good reasons for that. But moving away from standard components that you control the supply of is, and they've always done it with cables and connectors, but it's just, it's poison to repairability, right?
But I think there's I think one extra story that's current that we should probably throw into the mix is the Sonos story about them basically no longer running software upgrades on there. So any early adopters kit that's probably pumping music through their whole house is now bricked. It's not going to be given any more software updates. They have decided that it's going to cease to work. Basically, they've decided it's too expensive. That's the statement they're making, and I think that's worse than not making it repairable in some ways. That's deciding, that's unplugging its life support system and going, do you know what? All these things that we've put out into the world, they're done.
There is that, and that's a very pertinent issue, is that everything now runs on software, like cars, like everything. Like mechanics can't fix cars because the computer's doing something. The fact that, and software development is a tough business to be in, especially as well if you're doing that as well as hardware. There's not many good software developers out there in the world. Frankly, it's kind of can explain a lot of what Sony's kind of demise on, a lot of, that's why Apple won on the iPod versus whatever Sony was doing, was because Apple had the software and now it was a software game. For the idea that Sonos, which, it's supposed to be a luxury, it's an expensive product that you've spent a lot of money on it. You've installed it in your house. It's like, it's not something you can just even change easily, is it? Like, it's fitted. I don't think
so. No, it's
and the idea that they're just going to give up, but nothing's changed about that. There's no reason they couldn't support that hardware.
No.
But then at the same time, like, why? Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm on this like computer upgrade cycle, which probably costs a corresponding amount of money. I managed to go like 5 years without upgrading, but by that point it was just impractical to keep using my old laptop. Like we're sort of we're kind of used to having to upgrade certain things. And phone, like
but I think the cycle between upgrades is getting. Well, for me, the cycle between upgrade, there was a stage definite where I was like, oh, look, I'm due an upgrade, woohoo. And now I'm like, I really don't seek an upgrade now. But then my consciousness has changed slightly. So, but I think, that the answer to the question of why are things not repairable, yes, there's this this capitalist selling people more things. But I think also there's the impact, the environmental impact, the impact on rubbish, the impact on landfill, the impact on has not been a stakeholder at the table for a very, very long time. So it's like when people sell you I don't know, if you're in a shop and you're choosing different foods things, if you're simply going on your perception of speed, maybe you'll buy pre-grated cheese in a bag and spend more money on it if your factor is this sort of perception of time.
Yeah.
Though, grating cheese does not take very long. But it's
annoying,
but if you say, okay, well, actually, I'm going to look at price, then I might not buy but if I'm going to look at price, I'm going to look at time, and I'm going to look at rubbish. The more factors I add into my decision making, the less likely I am to buy a small pot of pre-grated cheese. And it's the same thing, like if Apple, or if they're, there's this whole thing about this objective being this sleek, this user experience, the tactile nature, smooth, no bumps, laser, blah, blah, blah. If that is your absolute focus, then of course you're not going to give a stuff about fixing it. That's just not a factor. But I just don't, I just think that factor can't be ignored for a minute longer, really. It's like, It's just led us into this whole, this pursuit of something. I don't know if you saw, I put this, I found somebody, I don't often do quotes on social media, but somebody shared a Kurt Vonnegut quote, which was something like, his words are better, but it was basically, I needed an envelope, and my wife said, why don't you just go and order 100 envelopes on the internet? And he's like, I don't want to order 100 envelopes. I only need one envelope, because when I go out to buy my envelope, I might smile at a dog, or see a laughing child, or bump into a neighbour, or my objective is not speed. He said that we're just animals on this planet to fart about, and that's what makes us happy. And having these kind of like this perception of efficiency, it's just not. I'm paraphrasing and mixing and everything, but but basically it's like Apple's decided we all want a really smooth phone, so that's what they've been focusing on, and we've got sucked in. But actually, what we want is a livable planet.
I don't know about this laughing child thing, though. Like, they're usually being horrible. Who is doing this well? I have found Teenage Engineering is a company that started off making a synth. It's a little synth. I think they're sort of like, they kind of came on in the sort of 3D printing revolution, and sort of like in sort of kind of small shop doing hardware, like really high quality hardware manufacturing in Sweden, I think. They released this synth. I think I bought mine in 2011, and they, unlike all the other music hardware companies, instead of like creating a new version of it after 2 years, it's been the same model the whole time, and they've done these really brilliant software upgrades for it. Like, they keep giving you new features for the synth. It's been a little while now, but like, also I've repaired it twice. Like, I had to go to iFixit, but like I got the part, like replaced the part, unscrewed it. I think I've actually repaired it 3 times now. And it maybe this thing costs like $1,000 to buy now. So, and I've repaired it for a cost of maybe like £50 each time. And so I think they're setting a really good benchmark precedent for something that is quite sort of bespoke and small and micro, but they've made it replaceable enough,
So the things that happen in your synth and Sonos, Sonos is relevant, I think. I mean, how much does the technology for pumping sound around change?
Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, it's like we hit that, like, all I can think of is like streaming bandwidth type considerations.
yes.
But we hit all we need for that a long time ago. Like, and if it's fine now, why would that's not going to change?
No.
It's not like they're going to bring in, like, suddenly all my music's going to be in multi-channel HD 4K surround sound. It's like, no, the sound is the sound, and there's only a limit to what, there's a limit to the human frequencies human beings can hear. And
Exactly.
once
So
you've hit that, you're fine.
So, I don't know what this Sonos upgrade can possibly be delivering, that would mean that it's a good business decision, because they've had some big names complain about them now on Twitter. Alan Cooper, big UX usability, big followers, authors going.
Come on.
Come on, Sonos.
Yeah, and it could be like they want to support like some new streaming service, and that streaming service can only give them SDKs for some like minimum version of some operating system. But I don't know, like, you're just gonna have to figure it out, guys. Like, come on. Like, you owe it to your customers to figure it out.
You do. I mean, ditching, and, a couple of the complaints I've seen are things like, so we're being punished for being the early adopters who persuaded all our friends to buy Sonos. Thanks. But it's, like, there's no analogy where you bin off your old customers just because you after some new ones. I don't know. I don't know enough about why they've made the decision to know, but it seems like
we could have researched that. But
I don't want to. I don't really care. I don't have Sonos. I viewed it as a luxury item that I didn't prioritise in my personal budgets. But then when it comes to programming, so going back to your laptop upgrade cycle. I certainly have. I did upgrade my laptop a few years ago, a couple of years ago. I don't know. Primarily because, first of all, one reason was stupid, which was that my fan kept going off like crazy when we were recording the podcast. Do you remember on my little MacBook Air? So I thought, I need more power. So I've got more power, but now I realise that actually it depends what software I'm running. So I was stupid, but I wanted a bigger computer. I just upgraded. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm sort of like, because I make apps for Apple's platforms, I'm sort of like locked into. It's funny because Michael, who I share the studio with, has just this week been making a Hackintosh in the next room, and we've been talking a bit about that, and he's been sort of showing me how you do it. And it's like, so you can just buy, if you buy certain components that is quite well supported, that you can sort of slot them in and kind of install Mac OS, and you sort of have to be careful, and certain things will be awkward. Sound is probably not going to be great all the time, but like I was like, maybe I'd need to like sort myself out a Hackintosh rather than spending all that top dollar on a Mac. But what I was going to say was like because I'm doing like iOS development, it's very hard for me to sort of be too behind the thing.
Yeah.
And because like now that Apple have like they're moving everything over to Metal, which again is another standard that they've dropped the standard that everyone else was using. That I was really happy they were using OpenGL and moved it over to Metal, which is their bespoke hardware blah 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 thing. But the upshot of that is if I'm working on an app, I couldn't look at certain things in the simulator because that wouldn't work.
Yeah, this is the difference, though, between being the consumer of a product, like, and these days I am very much a consumer of a laptop. I'm not, I don't make anything with it. Frankly, a browser, but I enjoy having a nice screen. But I've now got an external monitor anyway that I use most of the time. But I don't make anything. Everything I do works on the web, and I don't really I could do with a much lower grade machine probably, except for those few moments when I'm doing something a little bit more involved where I want some processing power. You're different when it comes to laptop consumption. It's the same with Sonos, like how much or buying a new car. I mean, my van was made in 2003. It doesn't have air conditioning, it doesn't have electric windows, it doesn't have central locking. Do I need those things? I don't need them. There's certain moments when we're driving along with the sun on the windscreen and we go, oh, aircon.
Yeah, but it really is diminishing returns with the upgrades.
Totally. And my van, Volkswagen do continue to produce spare parts, or if they don't, someone else can. So I can buy non-Volkswagen parts should I need them. But mine has no computerization to speak of. A mechanic does not need a laptop to fix my van, and so and then so it's kind of a. And I know a lot of the fuel efficiencies and all this comes from the computering bits. So I'm not saying no to all of it, but there's a consumer point where you don't really need the latest version of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, and then there's that funny thing where you're almost incentivized not to upgrade because you've got, like, my old laptop had USB ports, SD card reader, HDMI output. This one doesn't. I've got like 3 dongles hanging off it just to plug in my normal stuff. Like, so they need to get away from this. I know you can sell a thinner laptop, but you gotta chill out with that. Like, nobody needs their laptop to be any thinner anymore. Their hands are not changing size. Their heads are not changing size. Their legs, their bags are not getting any bigger. Like, stop with making it thinner.
It's not just Apple. It's not just. There's loads of things where we're getting into this terrible habit of buying a new one. Like, I've bought deliberately a dual lit toaster and kettle, and part of their selling point is that they're repairable. You can change the element in both of them. So really, yes, they are expensive, and it was a bit of like, how much?
Yeah, you pay a premium, but it's like buying good shoes. It's like you don't have to replace them after 6 months, so you spend less overall. That's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah, and the dual lit, they do an equally swanky looking kettle that's not repairable, and it costs about the same. So I went for the repairable version. Okay, it's like, it's that sort of thing of like, it will break, the heating element will go wrong, and in mine, I can replace the heating element. And a heating element, again, is not technology that's changed enormously in the last 100 years.
Do you know, one of these things is like, often people have a slightly inflated sense of how much they're going to actually be able to repair something, right, or fix something. So if you put that on there as a selling point, you can replace this part, even if people don't, like, it's commercially a good idea to be able to sell it on that basis. And with environmental catastrophe, this needs to become much more of a mainstream. Like we had like environmentally friendly checklists, like we need to take that to the next level and bring repairability into that. So I'm just thinking about, like, as we sort of round up, I'm thinking about how I made a video. My last YouTube video was kind of like covered a little bit like sustainable hardware production idea, and the thing that I've settled on, like, because to make electronics, like, stuff is really tiny now, like, and there's no real way around it. And like, part of what makes the stuff viable is that you can make it super small now. What I really think the way forward is, well, there's it's like standard components. Like, if there's any way we can start standardizing on these modules and having them. So that means for someone like Apple, either you've got to make your thing an open standard that other people can start adopting, or you got to start just letting other people buy the parts that you're making and incorporating them into their own technology. But because, and this is a story I just wanted to throw in, like, I got my Commodore Amiga from like the early 90s out recently, and I was a bit worried that I wouldn't be able to use it because the mouse is so old and like the mouse buttons aren't very good. The fact that I opened it up, standard micro switches, which I had a drawer full of already because it's a standard component, literally just desoldered the old one, put the new one on, a fully working 25-year-old mouse. No problems. No weird electronics, no like stuff in there. I mean, it's one with a ball, so like you got to clean it once in a while. Clean the ball. But like, standard like that stuff just used to have standard components in it by default. Like, you could replace a capacitor, you can replace a micro switch, you can replace these components. But as people start creating these smaller and smaller and smaller things, and there's this incentive to make them non-standard and bespoke because you want them to do a certain thing, Like that's the real barrier to repairability, to being able to replace those parts. And the whole PC build your own thing where you could get like an arbitrary graphics card, arbitrary motherboard. Windows would try and support all of it, and we know what doing that is like like Ubuntu, like supporting all the different hardware is not straightforward, but it opened up this world for a while where anything was possible. And then we sort of went back to the sort of bespoke things, and we got a better experience on some levels, but we lost that interchangeability. And the trouble is, all these things are really hard to get right, and you sort of feel like you've invested a lot of R&D into something, and do you really want to hand over? I don't think anyone's handing over this stuff unless they're forced to. No. We need some sort of new evolution of patent law, don't we? That sort of allows people to share their inventions while still... I guess that's what it is, isn't it? People incentivized not to reinvent the wheel all the time. Like maybe a patent needs to be a bit less aggressive, or something like a patent grants you a 10% more profit on something than other adopters or something. Or once you've recouped your R&D costs after that, you've got to share, that kind of thing. Or
factor in the cost of not being able to upgrade, or the cost of closing things down, or there's all of these things are. It all goes back to what you're measuring. And if you're just measuring growth and profit in your company, then that's all you're going to see. Whereas actually, if the sharing it out, we know is certainly from a software perspective, we know produces a better, not necessarily a better experience.
Careful now.
Anyway, we have to believe that that's the way forward. Sharing. Open source hardware, open source data, open source software. Just open it up and solve the bigger problems.
So much of Apple's business is built on open source stuff. So much of... And not it's the same like the pharmaceutical industry is profiting from research that has been paid for by American taxpayers to a massive and absurd degree. All of this money, all of this research, all of this education of the people that you're employing, it's all connected into the same thing. So don't just try and tie off a bit for yourself. Yeah. Be part of the wider system.
When I was doing that research for Wellcome, and we talked about the cost of medicine. And one of the things that big pharma, because the cost of medicine is actually quite arbitrary and inflated, if you're to believe the anti-cost, the people that I was interviewing. And one of the participants pointed out the fact that these pharmaceutical companies are benefiting from investment in education that civil society does. So, all those biochemists went to school somewhere, went to university somewhere, and suddenly our taxes pay for their skills that then they just get all, squirreled away.
Someone just goes, that's mine.
That's mine.
So this flow of value is very corrupt at the moment.
Yeah. So, it's all the same problem, innit?
Yeah. Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com and you can subscribe there, or do it in the app that you're in. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
You can find me at michaelforestmusic.com, or you can find me live probably right now at twitch.tv/michaelforest. And if you've got an Amazon Prime thing, you could even support that. Also, something that I keep forgetting to mention is anytime, problems with Amazon aside, anytime I link to a book that we talk about on Amazon, I make that a referral link. So if you just click on one of our links to Amazon on your phone in the podcast description and then buy anything, we get a cut of that. So there's a way you can support us for free. So if you want to do that, if you want to, if we mention a book, try and go through the link that I've put down below, and then we'll kind of get £1 or whatever. So that's another way you can help that I keep forgetting to mention.
Yeah.
It's also Patreon, grandpodcast.com/Patreon. Wrong. Something or other / something or other. Just go there. What else is there?
It's very helpful if you write us some reviews, ratings. We love an email. We get some nice feedback. We get some good questions. So if you don't want to admit that you listen to the podcast and you're too shy to give us social proof in public, then please email us at hello@grandpodcast.com. Or if you know us, just email us and we'll share out the stories to each other because, we're a sharing, caring kind of a duo.
Aren't we though?
But yeah,
for 2 hours every Friday anyway.
But tell your friends to subscribe or subscribe them secretly so that we get to see more downloads.
Indeed.
We don't care if you listen or not.
Clog up their phone with megabytes. And reviews, all that, help the algorithm find us. And with that, thanks for listening very much.
Thank
and
you
we'll
very
see you
much.
next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.